John Harton, Anita Brown Graham. Welcome to North Carolina Now.
Thank you, Shannon. Great to be with you.
Anita, the Institute for Emerging Issues is launching a new initiative, Innovate NC. This is coming out of the 2015 Emerging Issues Forum, all focused on innovation. What is Innovate NC and the goals of this project?
Shannon, you might well remember that back in February, I sat here talking about the Emerging Issues Forum, Innovation Reconstructed. And one of the things that I said was such a surprise to people was the fact that North Carolina, which really prides itself on innovation capacity, finds itself ranked in the middle of the 50 states. We recognize from our study that for North Carolina to move from the middle of the pack, we had to include more cities in North Carolina in the innovation economy. At this point, the innovation economy is probably about 2/3 Raleigh, Durham, and Charlotte. Innovate North Carolina seeks to bring 5 more cities into the Innovation Hub arena in North Carolina. It's a 24-month initiative involving 10 partners, so huge initiative that will really be an intensive, strategic initiative in these cities, helping them to build their innovation capacity broadly, but also spur a specific innovation project that should bring jobs and businesses and all the things that we enjoy in an innovation economy.
John, as Executive Director of the Office of Science, Technology, and Innovation within the North Carolina Department of Commerce, what do you see as the need for a project like this focusing on innovation?
Well, innovation, as Anita said, is it's critical to survive in today's economy. And innovation is not easy. And it naturally occurs in areas that have high density and where you have a lot of academic institutions, such as the Research Triangle Park and the Charlotte area, where that are naturally strong already. Innovation can occur anywhere, rural or urban, but it happens less naturally in urban areas, in rural areas, or in smaller cities. And so the goal of this project is to help give a helping hand, essentially, to those areas where it doesn't happen as naturally or as quickly. They have a lot of the resources in place, but they're maybe not combined in the right sort of way, or they might need a few additional resources, and this project is going to help spread that to those areas.
Anita, you have launched a request for proposals for this project. Who can be involved, and what are you looking for in those proposals?
Any city can apply except Raleigh, Durham, and Charlotte. If you're in Wake, Durham, or Mecklenburg counties, you are not eligible to apply, obviously given the goal of this project. Beyond that, any city can apply. We are requiring cities to assemble teams, so it's important, as John has said, that you assemble your assets in the right way, and we want to see that there is already a spirit of collaboration in these places that are selected. We also want cities to identify a particular project, something that is connected to an innovation space that they're trying to create that we'll be able to support them with. And then finally, we're asking all of the cities that apply to contribute $15,000 over the 24 months of the project. Now, these cities are going to get in excess of $250,000 in tools and resources, technical assistance, but it's really important to us that we're getting the cities that are ready to put some skin in the game. We're talking about moving the needle in North Carolina, and we want those places that are prepared to do that with us.
And Shannon, I should probably add to my comment, we're talking about innovation, but we should probably talk about what we're talking about and define it, and that is innovation is essentially the creation and adoption of new products, services, and business models that yield value. And so it's new things and new ways of doing things that add economic value and also societal value that's not always economic.
And Anita, how are you hoping that the work that happens in the communities that are selected becomes really a model for other parts of North Carolina as well?
Well, there are a couple of ways. We recognize that we only have the capacity to do this work with a limited number of cities, and I don't have any doubt that there will be any number of cities disappointed that they were not selected through this RFP process. So we want to be very open about the collaborative learning that's taking place over the 24 months. We want to share everything that we're learning with communities all across the state so that they too can adopt this model even without the intensive support from the 10 partners. But we also, at the end of this, want to be sure that we have put in place something that is replicable for other communities in the years to come. And the two ways that we're going to do this is by building out this model and making clear from start to finish what we've found are the intentional strategies that are really successful. And then one of the exciting things that we're doing is through working with RTI International, we're going to do some mapping of innovation in cities so that it's clearer to people what they have to work with. And we're hopeful that that work will connect to some of the statewide studies that John and his office do, so that we'll actually be able in the years to come to look at North Carolina on the sub-state level and really see not just whether we're moving the needle, but where we're moving the needle.
And John, why is that kind of approach so important to this work?
Well, a lot of what we do in my office is track North Carolina's progress compared to other states. And it's not too hard to compare one state to another state. There are a lot of data out there that can measure that. What's much harder is to get good, reliable data at the sub-state level, at the city level or the county level, that compares one city in North Carolina to another city in North Carolina. Or people often want to compare us to Silicon Valley, San Jose. It's very hard to get those data, and this effort is going to do that in a much more systematic way that is much more reliable. And what it takes is that'll be kind of a bottom-up effort. It's easy to get the state level data from the top down. It's harder to get it from the bottom up level, and this will put in place the procedures and the people to get it bottom up.
Well, Anita, I know John's working on behalf of the North Carolina Department of Commerce on this project at UNC-TV. We're proud to be helping to get the word out about the project and the work that you'll be doing. So now, if our viewers are interested in this project, as they think they've got an idea they'd like to explore with it, what do they need to do?
I'd encourage them to go to emergingissues.org. The RFP launched at noon today. Already there are hundreds of people who have requested this RFP. We look forward to as many applications as we can possibly muster. As best we can tell, and the partners have talked a little bit about this, this is the first time there's been this kind of statewide initiative anywhere in the country. We want North Carolina to up its game on innovation, and your viewers are going to help us do that.
Anita and John, thank you so much for coming and telling us about this new project.
Thank you, Shannon. It's always so great to be with you, and thank you for your partnership.
Thank you.